Previously on Worthless Whip's $1,000 Dictator car challenge.
Do it. Shake hands. Cold hard chin. So it's driving.
Yes, it is. Oh, it's rough though.
Yeah.
It's putting a smile on my face though, because this reminds me of back in the day.
Makes sense.
It's my first car.
Yeah.
Except way worse.
Hey Vivi, what do you think about this new piece of crap we brought over?
First of all, why you guys keep buying junk?
Alright, so what is your diagnosis?
Now that the 420 Blaze It SEL was safely back at the Worthless Whip's garage, we figured it was a good time to wash the car before we, opened anything up. Now, instead of taking it to a hand wash or a laser wash or any one of those places, we wanted to do things ourselves and maybe teach you guys a thing or two as well. Now, what we found out about this car was that it was actually donated by some sort of church. So the guy that we had bought it from hadn't had it that long. It had a long history previously of many owners. And we noticed by the sheen and finish of the car that it probably hadn't seen a real proper car wash in years. Now, am I going to make you sit through watching us wash the car? Well, yes, because I know you'll find it soothing, and I know you'll find it enjoyable. In all honesty, though, it was very soothing to take off years of grime from this car because it really, really needed it. Although there were some serious flaws in the clear coat situation on this old 1991 Mercedes, there was still a lot of rich, deep, thick paint that could be uncovered. First, of course, we started with a bit of a pressure wash to get the initial layer off, and we noticed that the paint already started to wake up. I feel like this guy probably could have gotten a little bit more money for this car if he just simply had washed it. After that, we put on the suds it up. The suds really helped kind of waken up the paint as well, because when we took the pressure washer to it after we lathered up the car, we noticed that it got blacker and blacker and blacker, and it was very pleasing to look at because originally I had thought that the paint was completely flat. Next, we whipped out the clay bar, which you mush up like putty in your hand, and then sprayed some detailing spray to lubricate the paint as we slid the clay across the paint, all to remove the impurities that couldn't be washed away with soap and water. You ever wonder why cars look so good after getting detailed professionally? The clay bar is the secret. Next came the buffing compound. You can use a $20 buffer from Home Depot or just a normal rag. They work the same. Dot some compound on the rag or buffer and go in slow circular motions across the surface of the car. Next came the wax. Make sure you apply the wax in a shaded area so the wax doesn't bake onto the paint. The warmth of the friction should be enough to allow it to adhere to the surface of the car. In fact, you should never wash your car in direct sunlight, especially when using detailing product. So basically do exactly the opposite of what we did. Remove the wax with rubbing motions with a clean rag after about 5 to 10 minutes. I was gonna say wax on, wax off, but I'd rather die than use overused 80s movie tropes. Would you look at that? That is how you add an insane amount of value to your used car before selling it. If this seller had spent an hour doing the same DIY detailing, the car would have a much higher value not only in photos, but definitely when someone showed up to see the car. Now that she was pretty enough, it was time to get her guts in order. Makeup first, internal surgery second, because that's how life works.
C-Milk.
Yeah.
Let's take bets on whether that thing's gonna pass smog. Simple? Yeah, right. This is Worthless Whips after all. Right, Sea-Milk guy, I've got to be completely honest with you when it comes to this car.
Yeah,
It was a very bad investment.
it was.
If you could even call it an investment.
It was one of those things where we actually had a conversation. This is the beauty of YouTube. It's not like reality TV. We had a conversation about like maybe we shouldn't do this episode next because like how bad would it be for the second full episode, like the second full car, to tell everyone totally not worth it.
It's absolutely not worth it. I mean, look, the whole point of our channel is try to find a cheap car,
Sure.
something cool,
All right.
fix it up, you
All
know,
right.
for a high schooler or something.
Sure.
And I guess we can help other people learn from our mistakes
Yeah.
because buying this car was a mistake.
I mean, if you want to buy a clapped out Civic or a Toyota or something like that, or the MR2. MR2 is a perfect example of something that was totally worth it.
Yeah.
Not as an investment, but something you can use,
Yeah,
right?
because you buy it and whatever
Works.
money and time you spend on it, you still get the use out
Yeah.
of the car.
Yeah. This one, I mean, the amount of work you had to put into it to get it to actually work
Yeah.
was one thing. And then number two, we've been talking to people trying to take it off our hands. We've been offered between $200 and $1,500.
Yeah.
I mean, we paid, what did we pay for it? $1,100?
Yeah, we paid $1,100, but you know the amount of time and effort,
Right.
and there were a bunch of parts that I had to buy. We put new tires on it.
Yeah. I mean, like, we're way over budget.
Sure.
We lost a ton of money on this car, and guess what? The difference is, with the MR2, although we didn't make, what did we make, like $700 profit or something, at the end of that sale, I had already driven that car thousands of miles. I was
Yeah.
using it to take my daughter to school.
Sure.
I was using it because it was so fun and usable. I can go out
Exactly.
into my driveway and it just turns on.
Yeah.
This car, we never used it.
I mean, I commuted to and from the office for about a month in the thing.
Yeah.
And you know, the problem is that pretty much every day I drove it, some new little
Right.
issue would crop up. I mean, yeah, we're driving it now. It drives.
Right.
But to get it started, that's
Yeah.
another story.
I mean, it's to the point where you mentally just forget about it. You're like,
Yeah, it's just too much hassle.
screw it.
It's too. I mean, the amount of trouble that we had to go through just to get it smogged
Sure.
was ridiculous.
I know, you had to rip the engine apart. And we're talking about a car that you can't really cut your teeth on if you're learning mechanics.
Now, here's the thing that's really frustrating about a car like this, right? Is I know that if we had the time to part it out, we could make way more than the car's worth.
Yeah.
Because you just sell the taillights that are in good condition. You get a couple $100. You
Right.
sell the steering wheel. You sell the door cards. You know, like the fuel pump, the little bits of the engine, the ABS modulator, all that kind of crap is worth a lot of money.
You could probably get $8,000 in parts if you part it. No, I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
Like, because we're looking at stuff like a little shroud or something is like $100-something bucks.
Yeah.
A little cap for a radiator, like an original Mercedes cap for a radiator is $80. You know, that kind of stuff.
So, like, we're sitting on what you could say kind of a gold mine worth of parts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a money pit because if anything goes wrong, because when things do start going wrong, and they really are going wrong with this car, then you have to go buy those expensive parts. You're the guy buying the part from
Right.
someone else. And you're
Right.
spending $200-300 on something that on a Toyota would cost $15.
These things are like a big circle jerk of these guys that try to keep them alive. And if you have the money, I get it because you have a passion for it. But one in this state is not worth it. If you spent $8,000 on one of these, it's going to be really nice, and you can probably, and they're fairly reliable.
Yeah.
You can drive it to a point where, yeah, maybe you have to fix something every once a year or something like that, not once a week.
No.
And that's why this budget for this car is way too low. Now, that being said, to do a pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
Well, first I'm going to say this still smells like frickin' piss.
It does.
It smells like dog piss, and I'm going to throw up. But number two,
Yeah.
if I was a high school kid,
Yeah.
right, and this cost $1,100, and it didn't have maybe 10% of the problems that this has, right? And you could drive it back, and let's just say it started reliably
Okay,
every time.
right.
You could drive it back and forth to school for like 6 months in your senior year of school. Yeah, sure, right? But the idea that when one thing goes wrong, your part-time job isn't going to be able to afford the repair means no way.
No, that's the problem. If it breaks once, then you throw the car away.
Mhm.
If you don't have money to throw it in. And
Right.
when I was in South Africa, an Afrikaans, mechanic told me once that a Mercedes-Benz is a rich man's car and a poor man's car.
Yeah.
It takes a rich man to buy one new.
Yeah.
Okay. A poor man can buy a second-hand one,
Right.
and it'll keep going. That's the thing. These cars are built like tanks.
They are.
That's why this thing's got 207,000 miles on
Sure.
it. We're still driving it, and it's being
And it wasn't,
neglected.
it wasn't taken
It's-
care of.
We took a look at the service history on Carfax. The thing's not been serviced for years and years and years.
Yeah, like
right?
what, 15 years?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, they are built like tanks. So a poor man can buy one cheap secondhand and then drive it for a long time without spending money.
Correct.
But then when it breaks, then it's a rich man's car again, because
Right.
only a rich man can fix it.
Sure.
So, you know, these things are a hell of a complicated. If you've seen the episode where I actually went and worked on the thing,
Yeah.
you'll see that these engines are no joke.
No.
You know what I mean? And you really have to have a lot of know-how to keep it going if you are just a sort of backyard mechanic, as we say.
Sure. Now a pro
Yeah.
to this car, and again, we're being overly negative just because this is in such poor shape.
Yeah.
Again, if you were really passionate about these Dictator cars,
Yeah.
and you bought a nice one, it'd be fine. You're driving on these roads that would normally make me car sick. I hate being passenger.
Right.
And these are twisty roads in the mountain, right? I forgot that we were even on them as we're filming.
Yeah.
I'm not having to pay attention to my stomach right now,
Right.
because this ride's so smooth.
It is such a nice ride, and it's incredibly easy to ride.
It is.
So, you know, like if you had one, well, even this one, once it gets started, it's totally fine. I
great.
fixed the overheating, I fixed all
Right.
the problems, so I can literally just drive it with my pinky finger. It's
Sure.
so easy
Right.
if I want to. And it's got power. If you put your foot down,
It's okay, yeah.
it gets there. It's a lovely plush ride.
It's like
We're
200
inside-
horsepower, and it gets
Yeah.
it. It's not gonna rip your face off, but it's
No.
kind of it's. There's no peak. It
Yeah,
just kind of
just keeps going.
goes like a.
It's
yeah.
a smooth, glidey kind of
Yeah.
a ride. It's a pleasure to drive, and I remember that from my first one. Is if you go on a long trip, a long road trip, this is such a good car for a
Right,
long road trip,
right.
because you reach the other end and you feel refreshed because
Yeah.
you've been in a car that's air conditioned, leather
Right.
seats, plush ride. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
perfect.
It is. So, what do you say we get this thing on a 0 to 60, just for posterity's sake?
Okay, let's figure out what it
It's
does.
supposed to do like a 9 or a 9.5. Let's see if it's still. Gonna do
You know what? This is a tired engine. This
I know.
thing has been
I know.
abused to the edge of the earth and back. So
Well, let's
I
abuse it
doubt
some more.
Yeah, okay. I'm good with that.
Next time on the final episode of the $1,000 Dictator car challenge on Worthless Whips, we're gonna see how many ponies this old grandpa held onto in a
Set.
0 to 60 test.
Go.
Okay, let's do this.
There she goes. She's building. She's building.
Not only that, we're actually gonna see if it's really cut out to be a Dictator car.
I'll be doing a little bit of a retrospective and comparing this car to the car of my youth and seeing if it actually stacks up to the memories I have.
Also, we find out if we can actually sell this thing. Thank you to everyone on patreon.com/worthlesswhips. That makes this all possible. Appreciate you guys voting on cars, leaving us feedback, and supporting the channel. We will catch you next week on the next episode of Worthless Whips.